The dirty secret. Insiders say UK waters firms knowingly broke sewage laws. We're going to read into this exclusive from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here, an exclusive from The Guardian with the headline of The Dirty Secret. Insiders say UK waters firms knowingly broke sewage laws. The exclusive reveals that whistleblowers point to broader sewage scandals with wastewater systems manipulated to diverge sewage. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. They knew that they were breaking some kind of laws, and I generally thought that when we left the EU officially, properly, in several years ago, that it gave the water companies the green light to do more. But apparently, according to this, perhaps they are just simply breaking sewage laws because there's a government that's not really doing anything to regulate anything in this country. I do feel like the country is very deregulated because of this current government. We've been kicking, screaming and shouting about the environment, and the Conservatives are kind of just like, yeah, well, we don't care, sort of thing. That's kind of how it feels like to me. So many stories I've covered about this. I've heard so many people telling me, and I remember I've been to a few places where I've looked at the water, and you can tell that you can't swim in it. It's not safe. It's not good for the environment. Definitely not good for the fish or wildlife that are in it. It's just really disgusting, to say the least. Now, one of the caveats as well is that one people was saying. Now, I said before about how I generally believe that we shouldn't be dispersing any any sewage back into the ocean. We shouldn't do any. Now, some people have hit back at basically said that it's physically not possible given how much rainfall that we have as a nation, which does make sense. But why are we talking about so much sewage being spilt now compared to times before? That's because more sewage is being spilt. And has the weather changed in England in particular in terms of the amount of rain that we've been getting? I would say no. So what's changed? Well, clearly, it's the water companies that have changed. It's clearly their decision to let out more sewage than they need to. And that's clearly what has happened here. And there's been no repercussions whatsoever from them. And it's cheaper for them to just disperse that sewage into rivers and seas rather than having that sewage treated and treated it back into clean water. That's clearly what the case is happening here. So for this, really, this headline, does this surprise me? No. Should you be surprised? No. Are we upset and angry about this? Yes. And how long is it going to take for us to undo this damage? A very long time, I'm afraid, because even if Labour, clamp down on these private companies, it still doesn't change the fact that they're not going to nationalise them, which is the biggest problem. Which means that it could still, it's entirely possible they could still drag on with this. But we'll have to wait and see what a Labour government does if we get a Labour government in power. You have to say that hypothetically, but yeah, it's pretty terrible to say the least. So whistleblowers say UK water companies are knowingly failing to treat legally required amounts of sewage, and that some treatment works are manipulating wastewater systems to divert raw sewage away from the works and into the rivers and sea. So they're basically they are not just allegedly breaking the law, but manipulating the amount that they have and whatnot, so that people don't chase up on it. It is well known that water companies are dumping large volumes of raw sewage into rivers and seas from storm overflows, but an investigation by the Guardian and Watershed Investigations revealed that the industry's dirty secret is bigger, broader, and deeply symptomatic. By law, every wastewater treatment must treat a minimum amount of sewage, as stipulated in their environmental permits. 4 whistleblowers have told Watershed that a large proportion regularly fail to do so, and are not reporting it to the environmental regulator. So they're not even, they're basically, essentially, allegedly, what the Guardian and Watershed are basically saying is that they're breaking the law here, and nobody's chasing up on it. The insiders say the amount of sewage reaching works is being manipulated by the front end of flowing trimming, which can be done by a number of ways, including by manual setting penstock to limit the flow, by dropping weir levels, and by turning down pipes at pumping stations. The diverged raw industry is making its way into ditches, rivers, and seas. One industry insider said they have personally surveyed works and found valves operated and diversion pipes installed so that parts of the flow arriving is deliberately diverted to an environmentally sensitive stream rather than into the works, so that the work passes compliance of sanitary parameters. I've spoken to staff who have carried out surveys to inform investment plans. They have found that the controls of terminal pumping stations have been deliberately altered so that they pump only a reduced proportion of the flow figures that were designed to pump, in the knowledge that this was a breach of flow compliance. The insiders add, I have spoken to people at other water companies who confess that flow compliance is a dirty secret of the UK's water industry, which environmental regulators know about, although perhaps not the scale, have turned a blind eye due to resourcing constraints. The raw sewage that is diverging away from the works either flows directly into ditches, rivers, seas, and lakes, or backs up in the sewage network and finds its way into the environment via storm overflow. Flow trimming, along with ingress from groundwaters, and an underlying fundamental lack of capacity at many sewage works, which have not been updated to meet population growth or changing weather patterns, are responsible for the widespread sewage pollution seen in the UK. It is an enormous scandal about that many who work in the industry know about, but nobody ever wants to talk about, says the whistleblower. Water companies report their overall compliance with wastewater rules as good, but dig a little deeper and you'll see lots of treatment works that are failing to deal with the amount of sewage that are legally meant to treat. The insider says non-compliance is widespread across the UK and that they are aware of works where there is as much as 30% of the sewage they are expected to handle go straight into the environment without treatment. They know what they're doing is wrong, and they're intentionally doing it. Remember, guys, they don't care. I've said this before, and I've said this again. They do not care about the environment. They don't care about your problems. They don't care about how much your water bill is. As long as they are making money, making profit, that's all that matters to them. They couldn't give two hoots about whether if crap backs up in your toilets or whatnot. They'll come and fix it, because they have a job to do so. But you know what? They will do the bare minimum to get by, these water companies. And this is exactly what they are doing here. Some operators, with or without the support of the chain of command, are deliberately reducing the flow of sewage into the treatment works by either dropping the levels of weir so that sewage flows out into the environment, or by cutting back the flows at pumping stations. This way they can say that they are treating a greater proportion of the sewage they receive because they are now receiving less into the works, as a whistleblower. Again, this is all manipulation to make it look like they're actually doing their jobs, but they're not. Sadly, there are many incentives for water companies, road teams, or staff to do this, including reducing costs and pumping treatment works that were struggling to comply with appearing to be passing, with the resulting regulatory performance rewards leading to staff bonuses and increased dividends to shareholders, with very little risk that the manipulation will be found or anyone prosecuted. A second insider said it's almost standard practice to control penstocks by hand to set it to a limit to reduce the flow, adding that the problem stems from sweating the assets. There's a lot of undersized overcapacity sewage treatment works out there, and I've rarely seen a works where all the assets are working. There's usually something out of service. Spilling to the rivers, saving millions of pounds that they should be spending on assets. Lots of storm tanks are sized to meet the 30-year-old permits, and there are sites with no storm capacity at all. A third insider said they have seen evidence of flow trimming at works owned by 2 different water companies. Operational teams on sites look for a workaround, often in the full knowledge of what they are doing and in full knowledge of the stakeholders. From the project manager all the way up to the person holding the purse strings, other times it's done without knowing the implications. No one knows the true scale of what's happening across the country. So there might be even more discharge. It's entirely possible that people, while we're hearing these stories in the public, it's a lot worse than we actually know, because they're doing it knowingly that they don't need that they're breaking the law, is what the Guardians report here is allegedly saying, and they're pumping out more sewage than they need to do because of these manipulation and tactics that they're doing to make it look like that they're actually meeting these targets, when in actual fact they're not meeting the targets and discharging it other places so that people can't chase it up, basically, which is what seems to be happening here. So there's more sewage dispersed than we know, which is even more scary. According to a fourth whistleblower, it is possible to identify instances of flow trimmings in the company's figures, but no one truly looks into the data. They won't even look at the detail. England's water companies declined to comment, but the industry body UK Water says, we recognise the current level of spills is unacceptable and we have to plan to sort it out. Between 2025 and 2030, water companies in England and Wales want to invest £96 billion to ensure the security of our water supplies in the future. £96 billion, God. And significantly reduce the amount of sewage entering rivers and seas. We now need to regulate Ofwat to give us the green light so we can get on with it. Not good enough. Ofwat says water and wastewater companies' environmental performances is simply not good enough. Now, the industry regulator is acutely aware of the damage it does to our national resources and public trust. Why is the government not pushing on this, doing more about this? This is the problem. However, where companies fall short of what acts over recent years, we have imposed penalties and payments of over £300 million. And in November 2021, we announced our biggest ever investigation into water and wastewater companies in England and Wales, with live enforcement investigations into 6 companies. This was specifically investigating whether companies are treating as much sewage as their wastewater treatment works as they should be, and this should be resulting in sewage discharge into the environment at times when this should not be happening. The Environment Agency is also investigating, a spokesperson says. We will always pursue and prosecute companies that are deliberately obstructing or misleading, including one on issues around flow compliance. We are conducting our largest ever criminal investigation into potential widespread non-compliance as thousands of sewage treatment works. There should be a lot of people. I would say, well, how far, like, let's say they find a lot of people guilty of this, people in the workforce, different departments and whatnot. What would be the action? What would you do? Now, you can't say throw them all in jail, guys. We can't ask them to do that because then we wouldn't have people to work these pumps. Do we impose fines on them? What do you guys honestly think? If there is a deep corruption of people within the system that are doing this, what should be done to them from the bottom up as well? Joe Webster of the regulator National Resource Wales says, we expect water and sewage companies to comply with the conditions on the environmental permits where non-compliance is identified, and we won't hesitate to take action using the full range of environmental powers available to us. Nathan Critlow Walton of the Scottish Environment Protection Agency says, SEPA access Scottish water compliance with authorisation conditions as wastewater treatments, works through the site's inspections, investigating events and incidents, sampling discharges, assessments of operating data, and SEPA's programme of environmental monitoring. We are not aware of any evidence of deliberate misreporting of overflow data by Scottish Water or other operators. A Scottish spokeswalker said, we are not routinely required by licence to assess or report whether we are passing the appropriate pass forward flow at our pumping stations and overflows and at wastewater treatment works. We set out to be compliant across all aspects of our licence and are not aware of any instances where we deliberately manage flows to spill early. Northern Ireland Water and Welsh Water declined to comment. Well, it's a bit different, Welsh Water, you have to say. I can't speak on Northern Ireland Water because I don't know too much about it. But Scottish Water is different because it's actually owned by the state. It's not actually owned by private companies. So I don't think they are allegedly breaking the law. I don't think so anyway, my understanding. But I can't speak for that. But does this story surprise you? In my opinion, it just doesn't, guys. I mean, I just feel like there's like we've been screaming and shouting about how bad it is for a while now. And I really worry what the summer's going to be like. I'm really worried about, people going into the seas and the oceans around the UK. I really, really do. It's going to be upsetting for some, because if kids or whatnot, it's very frustrating, guys. It really, really is. But it's not being dealt with. It's just not good enough. It really is. And they say it's not good enough, but I feel like, well, do something about it. And I feel like no one's doing anything about this issue. and they're allowing this to get away with it. That's kind of how that's just it. They're being allowed to get away with this. Action needs to be done, and let's hope. And I feel like I'm rinsing and repeating here that if a Labour government comes in, they do take action against this, because something does need to change. But what do you guys make of this? Are you surprised by this story? I'm not surprised. Did we expect them to potentially, allegedly break sewage laws, not treating as much sewage as they should, and instead just pumping it out into rivers, lakes, seas, and whatnot? Does this surprise you? Is it really just because the thing is that with the weather's always been the same when it comes to the amount of rain. Some of the times it's more years than less years, but I don't think that's the reason why we've had more sewage in our rivers and seas than before. But what do you guys honestly think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. Greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.